Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Friday in this new episode. And today it's a pleasure to have Adel Sedra, Emeritus Professor of University of Waterloo. Hi, Adel. Hi, Adel. Thanks a lot for being here and welcome aboard. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you very much, Maurizio. I'm very pleased to do this.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for your time. So, where are you located, Adel?
I live in Waterloo, which is a city about an hour drive west of Toronto in Canada.
Canada. Nice country. So, I have prepared a couple of questions for this our Wind Down Friday. So, you are the author of this great book. So, I have the Italian version of this Microelectronics Circuit, Sedra Smith. And so this is, for me, it's an honor to interview you. So you have taken us through the fascinating journey of microelectronic circuits from course notes to this textbook, classic textbook. So what's one memory from early days of writing this book that still brings a smile to your face?
A smile. Okay, let me give you an incident that's kind of funny, which happened during the writing of the first edition of the book. So we are now back to first edition appeared in 1982. So prior to that, Casey Smith, my co-author and my mentor and friend for many years, was in charge of doing the index of the book. Those of you who have learned electronic circuits and specifically oscillators know about the Barkhausen criteria. It's a criteria formulated by a man called Barkhausen and named after him, and he gives conditions for which a circuit oscillates. Now, our book, as it should, discusses the Barkhausen criteria, and Casey had an entry in the index called Barkhausen criteria. But Casey was a cat lover. He also had invented another entry called Meowhausen criteria. And unbeknownst to me, this entry made it, of course, there is nothing called Meowhausen criteria in circuits, but made it through the publication of the book. I didn't know about it until a few months later. I received a letter. Remember, at these days, people actually sent letters, not emails. I received a letter from a user of the book, and it has one piece of paper that said Meowhausen criteria, question mark, and then below it says cat lovers everywhere, exclamation mark. So this the funny thing that happened, and the stage was.
Thank you, Alan. So could you share a memorable moment or lesson from your collaboration with Smith that shaped not just the book per itself, but your own approach to teaching or mentorship?
Okay, there is, of course, a lot to say here, but let me say that Casey Smith, in my view, was the first engineer to realize and understand the transistor, to really figure out that the transistor was not, as some people thought, a replacement for the vacuum tube. It was not a simple replacement of the vacuum tube. And we wasted a lot of years at the beginning. Not me personally, I wasn't around all of that time, but in the 50s and early 60s, etc., with people trying to treat the transistor and teach it as simply a replacement for vacuum tubes. It's very different. And the main difference, of course, it was much cheaper. So you didn't design the circuit around the one device as we did with vacuum tubes. Casey saw that transistor prices were so little and they were exponentially coming down that you can use as many transistors as you want in a circuit, more or less, to fulfill the function and implement the functions that you're after. So this approach to transistor circuit design is what drove the book certainly and drove my teaching. I took that approach, formalized it, created a design theory for multi-transistor circuits, and that is what I try to explain in 8 editions of the book in various ways. One other thing that I want to mention about Casey's approach was the value of a well-designed exercise problem. I think our book has that, and we using the exercise problems to teach the subject.
Thank you. So with over 1 million copies sold, I guess probably more, and countless students learning from this book. Let me show again. This is the Italian version. This is the Italian version, Microelectronic Circuits, Sedra Smith. So how do you feel when you meet engineers that who say, your book helped me become who I am today, and so I am one of them?
Oh, well, that's very pleasing. Thank you for telling me this. I feel great. I feel great that all that hard work of many years that I spent writing and rewriting this book has positively influenced the careers and lives of successful people, including yourself, obviously. So it's very gratifying to know this. I want to tell you a funny story about that. Sometimes, by the way, many times also people, students, would have a book just like you have it, and if we are not across Zoom, but in person, they would ask me to sign it, and I would gladly do that. I love signing the books. One time, and that's the story, when I was still at the University of Toronto, somebody knocked on my door and came in with a big suitcase, and he said, "Could you please sign my book?" So I said, "Sure, where are the books?" He opens the suitcase, and there were large number of books of various editions and languages, etc. that I loved signing.
Very nice, very nice. So let's talking about education, so engineering education. So as this one has evolved, so what do you think now today's students need most when it comes to learning electronics, microelectronics in particular? How does that compare to the 1980s when the first edition, for example, was published?
So it's a very good question. I think now and then, and in the past, students needed experimentation.
Yeah.
Just the theory, etc., is not enough. They needed to build circuits. In the past, by the way, in addition, of course, labs do that, but not as effectively as one likes. But that's a separate story. In the past, in the 70s and the 1980s, when I was teaching electronic circuits, many students were hobbyists and built circuits and built radios and built other circuits in their basement. And so they came to the course with kind of a need to learn the theory. And the theory then helped them understand why their circuit worked or didn't work. So I remember teaching something and seeing students smile, or all of a sudden a light bulb goes on in the student's head. That's why his circuit or her circuit worked or didn't work. Now, of course, there's much less of that building circuits. Although we do more advanced versions of this, we build chips actually in circuits, in circuits courses. We sometimes are able to fabricate them and bring back the results. Difficult with the short terms, etc. But it's possible. So what they need is to experiment. Another way to experiment these days that I encourage is using circuit simulator. So you can simulate almost create the same environment and the circuit simulation and play with various parameters and component values. So the big thing is it's not enough to just learn the theory. It doesn't matter, you have to experiment.
So you emphasize teaching transistors as circuit elements rather than dwelling on their physics. So how do you think that philosophy has impacted the way your readers approach innovation and design today?
I would say, Maurizio, that is a key point of the whole thing. The key point for how KCs learned how and developed a way to design multi-transistor circuits, and the key ways that I learned that material and generalized it, etc., was please, when you are using the transistor as to design a circuit, don't think of it in terms of current of electrons and holes. Mm-hmm. Think of it as a circuit element with a simple model, and in this way, then you are empowered to use the transistor and many of them in a circuit to make a non-trivial, to implement a non-trivial function. Let me give you an example. Sure. If a computer programmer sits down to write code, the computer programmer does not think in terms of ones and zeros, right? In writing codes, he writes more higher level languages. And the same thing with circuit design. You can't design transistor circuits thinking of the physics of the device. You have to use it and be intimate with the device. You understand it fully and use it as a circuit element. And how did that impact? Well, it produced the amazing circuit designers that exist now. I didn't produce them all, but hopefully our approach in Sedra Smith helped in that direction in over 40 years that the book has been around.
Nice. So your book, Microelectronic Circuit, is now in its 8th edition, I guess.
Correct, yeah.
What were some of the biggest changes or challenges in updating the book over this year, over the decades? How did you decide what to keep, for example, or what to refresh?
Okay, that's again a very good question. We try to bring out a new edition every about 4 to 6 years, on average of 5 years. And each edition, if you look at them, you find that over the 8 editions of the book, you can see the timeline parallels the timeline of technology development. So each edition used the parameters and examples and problems of the latest available technology and used power supplies. For instance, originally we had power supplies that were 15 volts. Of course, none of this existed later on. Initially, the book was dominated by bipolar transistors, the first edition. And initially, we talked about things like transistor logic, TTL, and that kind of stuff. That all has disappeared in favor of the CMOS and various versions of CMOS, etc. So the book tried and aspired, we always aspire to use the latest technology so that the student would learn from it and go out the outside world, would not be surprised. We don't want students to be working with devices that are 5 micrometer devices, 5 micrometer technology, and then go out and see 28 nanometer devices and be shocked what's the difference. So we try to keep it moving with the technology. The changes of technology affected not just numbers, etc., but also affected coverage and the balance in coverage.
Yeah.
So, and hopefully, if you look at the 8 editions together, you will see that progression, and the timelines, the parallels, the technology timeline. Let me give you another example.
Sure.
We introduced, when gallium arsenide was supposed to take over the world, we introduced gallium arsenide in the 3rd edition, I think. I don't remember exactly. Kept it in the 4th edition. And then it became a more specialized technology. Very useful technology. Gallium arsenide, gallium nitride. Very useful technology, but it's not going to be widespread across all. Well, it's not CMOS. Okay, so what did we do? We took it out completely in later technology. And that caused me a lot of trouble with some people who love teaching gallium arsenide from the book. However, everything we took out including TTL and some of the JFET stuff, etc., can still be found on the website of the book.
Thank you. Great. So before concluding, I have other two questions. So the first is, so now in terms of technology, we are talking a lot. So from AI to solar panels, for example. So many. So how do you see the evolution of technology in general from your perspective? Is there something that excites you the most?
Well, like everybody else, I'm very excited these days about AI and what AI will do, not just to our daily lives, but in teaching. How will AI affect the teaching, not just of electronics, but on all subjects? But if I bring it back to microelectronics and circuits, I think, and now, by the way, my two younger co-authors are now working on the 9th edition. And they are going to introduce, for instance, things that don't exist in the 8th, like FinFETs. It's a very important advancement technologies that we want to now keep up with, and other things like that. And as always, our goal is to provide enough for the student at that certain basic level to understand this complex technology, so that when they graduate, they can learn more and be able to practice more.
Good.
So that's kind of our approach about the fast-moving technology.
Good.
Another aspect, by the way, that you will see is the use of digital technology in the e-book to enhance the learning process, something that we couldn't do in printed books.
Right. So, Adel, in conclusion, my last question. So, when you are not, so just to stay on the philosophy of Wind Down Friday, when you are not immersed in circuit, in microelectronics, teaching, so what are your hobbies, your passion that bring you joy? So, are there any connections between these and your approach to teaching or writing? So, tell us more.
Yes, absolutely. Let me first tell you that out of all the things I did in my career as a faculty member, teaching is the one that was closest to my heart, and writing is an extension of teaching. And the two enabled me to interact with students, whether they are students who I taught at the University of Toronto and the University of Waterloo directly, or through my writings, etc. I loved that interaction, and I enjoy it. And so my interest still remains a broader interest in people. I'm interested in people, how they think, how they approach their learning, how they approach their struggles in life. So I read a lot. So I read a lot about people, about families, about interesting people of various types, their memoirs. I love memoirs and biographies and the rest. I'm trying to write a memoir of my own myself, although it's going slowly. And I have to admit, I watch a lot of movies also about similar subjects. So yes, lots of hobbies relate to people, relate to reading and watching stories.
Nice.
People.
Very nice. Thanks a lot, Adel. It has been a pleasure and honor to have you at Wind Down Friday. Thank you so much, and I wish you a great weekend and have a good day. Thank you, Adel.
Thank you very much.